It being 9 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order. Pledge of allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Okay, the agenda submitted to us. Any additions or changes to the agenda? Just one thing during discussion time, our county engineer will explain the process going on for the management of Wildcat, and then a little discussion on that be about the only thing that I like to comment. Some discussion on management. Other than that, so that hire, that's a new hire. Yeah, the new hire.
For someone that moved to a different position.
Position move with it.
It's not a,
It's not a new hire, it's a new hire, but it's not an addition.
I'm
gonna make it group.
Okay.
Good.
I'll second yours. Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All right. Discussion. There being none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Carried. Approve business previous minutes of March 28th. It's a move. Give a second.
I'll second it.
Discussion. There being none, all in favor, say aye. Opposed, say nay.
I'll abstain, being I was sick for that meeting.
No problem, thank you. Great, move on, public comment. Anybody on the screen or in the audience for public comment? Doesn't appear to be, so moving on to appointments, we have none today. Consent agenda. We found that this is a move within the fire, so there's no addition. Comment on that? Entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Being none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Carried. Action item. Consider approving a CUP for Anthony and Joyce Hepner to operate an agriculture oriented business in the ag district of Spring Grove Township. Marty.
it's a conditional use permit for a meat processing. And they're doing custom processing of some beef, some lamb, few animals. And what this is part of the process. They have not gotten the permit from Minnesota Department of Ag yet for the retail part of it. Once they get this permit, that's sort of their last step. So then they can get the retail permit from the Department of Ag. There's a number of steps that go along with managing the solid waste and the land spreading and that type of stuff. And that's, if you see in the packet, you'll see those conditions and the outlining, and that's the part that goes along. They were small enough that they were exempt from the permit, but they still have to meet the requirements that go along with any of the activities. So they're exempt from a lot of it, but not all of it. So there is record keeping, there is some tracking. There is some documentation of the fields that are applied, and they do have plenty of space to deal with it when they work in concert with the rest of their relatives. And they do have a tank for managing the residual cleaning water because it was their milk house. So they had that set up. So they've got about a 2,000 gallon tank to manage the liquids that come off of the process. So that's pretty much the situation. They'll be open, I think, Wednesday morning, Friday morning, and then Saturdays. So it's pretty limited hours, and they're estimating maybe 2 or 3 cars at the most at one time. So pretty, small in terms of that type of thing. No signs on the road or anything like that.
Pretty low key. word of mouth advertising.
for the most part, right?
I think what he wants to sell it.
Are they, it's a small business operation right now.
Yep.
With the cup, they can expand.
They thought at the absolute most, they would have one employee. Yes,
Things can change over time. With the cup, they still can expand.
yes.
Is it just processing the meat and packaging, or are they gonna be doing sticks and sausages and stuff like that?
I think it's just, yeah,
That's just a curiosity.
right, yeah.
It's all processed.
It's still processing, sure.
So it's USDA, they got their,
I think 4 times a year, the Minnesota Department of Ag would be there.
right, I mean, so they've gotten their licenses from them too, or do they need to get this local one first and then move on and get the state
It's
and
the,
the USDA? stuff?
yes, we're first.
It's, yep,
I'll make a motion to approve the CUP for.
I'll second it.
Gotcha.
And just, you should probably put on there to follow guidelines. Conditions that have been. State. That have been stated in the. CUP.
Any other discussion? There being none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Carry.
Thank you.
Next is, consider renewing 25-year lease contract number DHCW 37-1-22-0057 Wildcat between the Army Corps of Engineers and Houston County.
So I'm gonna present this on behalf of Donna, so.
Sure.
Yes, so Donna, myself and Attorney Yon through the Attorney's Office have been working with the Army Corps on the renewing of the lease for Wildcat Park and Landing. So this is a 25-year lease, same as the previous lease term as far as length. The cost to the county is a $500 cost, and that's to cover the Army Corps' expenses to administer the contract. Just a few items to point out in here is, the Army Corps has been really good to work with the county on adjusting some of these terms that they meet the county's needs. They really want to work with Houston County. They don't want to really dictate everything. They want to work with us. So that was good. They do require that we submit to them a plan each year of what we want to do each year for maintenance and type of improvements. They also require that we put together a long-term plan. So we put together a 25-year plan. That has not been run by the Parks Committee. It was kind of a last minute quick addition, but that can be changed at any time. We can just make updates to that plan. So the 25-year plan is just looking at for the most part, we have in there adding bathrooms on the south end of Wildcat Park, and then a lot of maintenance stuff, the maintenance of the buildings and the facilities, what we put in there for the long-term plan. We didn't put anything drastic or anything that's kind of unforeseen out there within that 25-year plan. A couple items that I wanted to mention, because some of this stuff does affect anyone that we hire for, like park manager, anyone that does work down there, is that there is requirements in this agreement now for minimum wages of being, I believe it's $12.50 an hour for any employee that's hired down there, and also keeping track of and providing sick time. All of our county staff would fall under that, but the county staff is all get paid at or above that rate, and they get provided with the sick time as well, or the paid leave. So that doesn't affect county staff. It'll be more for terms added into the park manager position or anyone else we hired down there for work. So yep, go ahead.
So the new park manager, any of the employees that they hire, they have to abide by all that.
So if they hire any
That's new?
employees, yep, so that's some stuff, and that's a non-negotiable kind of terms within the agreement. So
So that's a change.
that'll be a change. Yep. Yeah, so if they hire any, and the terms are back on, in I believe, section 36 and 37. 36 is the wage, that talks about actually, the minimum wage is $12.15 an hour, $12.15 an hour.
Yeah.
And then the paid sick leave, it is, so many. See, it's within section 37 here that talks about 1 hour of paid sick leave for every 30 hours worked. So it's not a major amount of time, so it worked on there for, well, 30 hours, you only get 1 paid sick time off,
That
so
must be a federal
but
rule.
it's a federal. It's something they're requiring at their parks now, or at their contracts, so it's a fairly low amount. The bigger issue, I think, is just kind of, tracking of everything with this to keeping track of how long everyone works down there. And again, that'll be that park manager required to do that. So that'll be in that contract when that gets ultimately put into place.
But the park manager contract is not subject to this. That's a contract that they're getting paid, so it's not an hourly wage type thing, it's a lump sum contract.
Maybe a question for Tess. I believe that, whoever we hire as that contractor theirself or the firm themselves maybe would not be required by any employees that they hire would be, so. So definitely a question for Tess.
Is this,
Say that again?
The individual that we hire, I'm not sure. Yeah, that we, okay, yes, the individual we contract with maybe wouldn't themselves,
Right.
but any of their employees that they would hire would.
Maybe.
Well, their employees definitely would. It's the individual that we contract with, I'm not sure exactly if that individual would be required to have it.
Person that signs the contract. To the subordinate.
Yep.
now that's if they hire somebody to do and become their employee.
Yes.
If they have let's say they have a contract with somebody that's gonna come and do the lawn.
Then they don't.
Is that person subject to the 12.15 an hour? That's
Well-
what's here.
We're working on that lease, that's, Corps of Engineer, a question came up with. That wages for, minimum wages for people that work for the contract.
Yep, so within the terms of the new lease, that section 36 and 37 talk about the paid sick and the prevailing wage, or not the prevailing wage, but the minimum wage. If the contractor that we hire, if they hire a different
Subcontract.
subcontractor or a different firm to go down there and do the lawn mowing for them, would that employee be required to be paid?
The way I understand this, and I have discussed it with the county attorney as well, is that our contract with the feds, the federal government, when we subcontract out, what we're required to do is what our subcontractors are required to do. The underlying, the subcontract that when we contract out has all the same obligations built into it under contract law, the way I understand it, that our contract with the federal government does. We cannot alter that. So we can subcontract it, but we cannot get rid of any of the original requirements that we're required to have in that contract. So we can't use a subcontract as a subterfuge. So what's in there is what is required.
No, this is different.
Yeah, this is the first quarter.
Um,
This is, we're still working on the other deal, but, I guess to clarify it in my mind, and I think this is the easier way to say it, it's like, you hire somebody and they're on a salary. This is gonna be the manager, it's not an employee, but it's like, you hire somebody or you contract with somebody, this is the job. If it takes you 100 hours to do it, or it takes you 10 hours to do it, this is the job we want done. We're hiring or contracting a manager to say, we want you to manage this place for 6 months, get the job done. What they do below them is what we're talking about now, when they hire a person to do other jobs.
If it helps to understand. The contract with the Corps of Engineers should appear in the exhibits to our subcontract. Because all of those features are incorporated therein. We are, it's really, another example might be, we have ground leases at the airport. We do allow, with approval, for those ground leases to be either assigned or subleased out. There are some differences between those two. The original lease is incorporated into all of those assignments or subleases. All of the obligations and all the duties. So this will appear as an appendix or exhibit, whichever way we attach it, to any subcontract we have with a third-party vendor. Does that make sense to you, Brian? Is
It
that what
does,
you
yeah.
understand? Yeah. You
So,
don't have any rights to alter that core contract, the Corps of Engineers.
so just as an example, you get the grant for building the new bathroom facilities on the south end. Hire a contractor to do the construction of that. That contractor is subject to this federal regulation, just as if we hired. If the person is contracted to take care of the Bobcat hires somebody, they are subject to the same. The subcontractor to them is subject to the 1215, 1 hour every 30 hours and all of that business. Because of this contract.
That's my understanding. You'd have to verify that with the county attorney, but that is my understanding after speaking with you.
But similar to prevailing wage studies. As a subcontractor to a contractor or even whatever, that person, I'm familiar with it, I had to show that I was paying what this guy wanted and paid what Wisconsin wanted. As a subcontract, 2 tiers down, I still had to show that I paid it, so it's kind of, not similar to that.
It just,
Yes,
if we go to the lawn mowing thing, just as an example. The person contracts with somebody and hit one individual to come down once a week and mow the grass. And she's gonna pay them $30 per week. You don't know how many hours it's gonna take, is that gotta be broken down, or is this just a subcontract?
I believe based on the stuff language, but then here for the record keeping is that yes, that they will need to keep track of the hours. The actual hours worked and make sure that it
Contract amount
is at a minimum.
correlates to the 12.15 an hour and the 1 hour.
At a minimum. They can go more.
That'd be the course.
Whoever gets the contract.
I think it's safe to say that you ain't gonna get ready to work for less than $12 an hour anyway. these days.
Well, that's not necessarily true. If you go to work at a daycare facility for $8.40 an hour.
That's what it is.
Well, that's the owner and.
Okay,
Okay,
so any other concerns with the lease? This is 25 years, well beyond our time. I guess is really the motion that we accept the lease contract. For the engineer. Okay, is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Further discussion?
So there's no other changes to it, just those two basically?
Those are the highlights.
That's the highlights. That's the main items. The other stuff is more of language changes, very similar stuff that was in there. When there's some, ADA stuff, there's different stuff. A lot of that stuff was in the previous lease as well.
Not like we got a whole lot of choice.
No,
Well, you know,
I was just curious if there's more.
so there being any further discussion? All in favor, aye, say aye. Opposed, say nay. Carry. While we have you, Brian, we had, the park management meeting yesterday and you have a kind of a report for us that say where we're at and the next steps here.
Yep, so we've had multiple meetings with the primarily the Parks Committee members, a couple, employees and stuff that have been involved. So we interviewed, we advertised for the park manager position. We received 4 applicants. We went through and the county employees that are on the Parks Committee, along with the commissioners on the Parks Committee, along with a couple other county employees that have some involvement with the parks or the operations that affect this contract. We're involved with the interviews. From that applicant interviews, we kind of narrowed it down to the top 2. We got back together for a second meeting. We discussed those 2 interviews. We brought in Andy Mildy and talked about his view of what was proposed. He wasn't able to sit in on the actual interviews. Looked at stuff from the IT perspective on how he thought the software that was being proposed, how that would integrate with the county software. And then the parks or the interview committee ultimately voted on which individual we wanted to proceed with. At that time, the result was very close, very, very close, but the end result of that vote was, I believe, 4-2 split in favor of the one individual. We met again yesterday, had a little bit more discussion, some follow-up questions, and kind of brings us to where we are today. So at this point, we're getting ready to figure out, getting that contract put into place. We're going to need to have the board make a decision on the selection of who we want to work with for the park manager. The park is scheduled to open up on May 1st. Some years, if the weather allows, we open up prior at the park manager's discretion. If the park manager is not hired and ready to go by May 1st, I can work with Tess and, my staff and Donna and try to, use some county resources, county staff to try to get that park open up on May 1st and buy us a little bit of time for that park manager to get in there and get going. But ultimately today's April 4th, so that's less than 1 month away, and we want to have that park manager in there and functioning. So we want to, start getting ready to move forward on this pretty quickly. So I don't know if Tess wanted to add anything more or discussion on that. But at this point, we're going to need to have, the county board decide, do you want to hire a park manager? And who is that? Based on the committee's evaluation of that, ultimately 4-2 vote, do you want to bring in the top 2 candidates and have the full board interview them? And then the schedule for that, the contract and everything.
I have been thinking about this since yesterday, and I feel that this board could meet with the top 2 candidates, get the information. I would like the rest of the board members to see the applicants from the top 2 only, that they can evaluate between now and maybe next Tuesday, have the top 2 come in and and have the questions answered by the majority of the board, because, Greg and I were there, but, it's all of us need to make the final choice. And I feel it's an important one enough that we all should have the opportunity to see what's been provided, how it's been provided, and then make our decision from that. That's my view, but any thoughts on that?
Well,
Go ahead, Eric.
from what I gather here, what Brian just said that there's already been a candidate chosen, correct? By the Parks Committee?
Have
People that did the interviews and.
has a recommendation, like I said, it was,
Right,
it
right.
was
That's
definitely
what
very,
it was just, they were gonna pick a candidate to bring to us for a recommendation for approval.
we definitely have a recommendation of who the top vote getter was.
Right.
Or, points getter and stuff, so
So why do we
can definitely-
any more time?
ultimately, and I guess.
Well, I think it's important enough that it was, at one point, there was discussion that they're so close together, we'll flip a coin. I said, this ain't a flip a coin. No, this is important enough that that's our line, our reputation on the line.
So was this a point system interview? So all you guys, was there 6 of you? That got to vote? And you guys evaluated the questions that they gave or answers they gave, and then you assigned points to them.
Pretty much.
Not everybody assigned points, and then there was further information provided yesterday, so I think that's.
You want to come forward, test, and nobody can hear you.
I don't know that everybody scored on a point system. And there was some, or documented. Or a documented system, as well. I haven't seen all of them, only part of them. I understand, listening to the committee, that not everybody was in favor of assigning some kind of points to that. The other thing is there was further information presented yesterday regarding what needs to transpire for a contract. And from that, pretty deliberate, quite a bit of conversation surrounding that.
What was that?
Regarding the business plan going forward, how much meat was on the bones of that business plan?
LLC, that's what we talked about.
Not just the insurance, as to the business model, how it would be held, and some other details as to. Well, I don't want to put words in people's mouths, except that what I heard several times yesterday, and I'm just here to report what I heard, is we'll address that when we come to it. And so that created a lot of discussion thereafter, and I take it that's why.
So wasn't those business plans presented during the interview process? And then you guys made a judgment on what they presented?
I didn't make a judgment. I'll just make that clear. I'm just here for the process. I'm just here for the process. It was not all fleshed out with each interview.
There were
I
too many
can-
questions still needed yesterday, in my opinion. We had to go through a second interview.
But it was 4
Wasn't-
to 4 to 2 to hire this one person, one individual, correct?
I haven't seen all of the 5. I haven't,
We voted.
from a process, they voted, but I haven't seen what they voted on. So. Just being real
And we
clear.
directed her. Got into that. Your attorneys.
Well, we didn't direct her to sign up for an LLC. We can't demand how they hold their business model. Their business model hadn't been determined. At that point, we can't say what legal entity, how they want to hold their business. However, there was discussion around that and what those options might be. So we provided some guidance in that regard. I should say the county attorney, provided different options that may be looked at. And then, but we didn't have any conclusion as of yesterday's meeting as to what that would be. Because we advised them that they would have to talk to their accountant and their attorney to get all those factors ironed out. And
So you've already told this person that they're the top pick and they need to do more research or bring more information forward, is that right?
Yes, they need to bring more
I would
information,
refer to,
but they weren't ready.
But we didn't have a contract for them either, so.
well, you can't have a contract without having the details,
How can you not?
but
I would like to, probably address it because I was on the committee. I scored the candidates, using the forms that were provided. There was a Parks Committee meeting that was set up. And on the agenda was discuss new manager and contract updates. And we came to the Parks Committee meeting yesterday, and the first thing they did was say, oh, so-and-so is here to have some discussion because there was, something that came up. Well, it seems to me that this was a second interview, and there were two people on the Parks Committee who had bowed out of the interviews because of their connection with it. So here we are, basically conducting a second interview with a person who I'm not sure what she was told. Whatever, what they were told when they said they had to come to this meeting and how they were supposed to be prepared. How was she notified? I keep saying how were they notified on Friday that they needed to be at this meeting Monday morning at 9:30?
Well, I will say from a
Because-
first committee member, some of us didn't even know that they. were
We
gonna
didn't
be
know
there. I
they were even going to be there. So all of a sudden, we're doing this, second interview without knowing
Sounds.
that we needed to.
The questions needed to be answered.
Well, then why wasn't the interview committee scheduled to do this before the Parks Committee? Because it was my impression at the Parks Committee meeting that we were going to discuss the contract. Put together our contract based on the proposal that they had submitted and go from there. And then all of a sudden we have all of this other stuff going on. It seems like we are circumventing our own processes.
Let's back up. Here. So yesterday's meeting was the Parks Committee meeting, not an interview meeting?
No, it was, right.
Because the
It was
interview
the Parks
meetings are
Committee.
done with.
Mhm. And,
the,
like I said, it seems like we're circumventing our own process that we set up to do this.
Did both candidates go through the same process
Yes,
or right down the line up until yesterday?
yes.
Yep.
Mhm.
Did they have the same detail? Did they have? a
That-
plan?
okay.
Did he-
That was not,
that was my-
I realized that was your discussion, but that was something that the interview committee should have done,
Well, that's right.
not at the Parks Committee.
Well, that's what I mean. It wasn't done at the interview. It should have been done, right?
I had a clear, pretty much understanding of each of the applicants and what they were proposing. And I guess I would have to also say that during the Parks Committee meeting, you were specifically saying things that weren't in the proposal, but they were. So I'm just a little confused about, the software that they'd use and this and that, the specifics of it, but there were, I think it's definitely an issue what happened yesterday that it should never.
Well, it sounds like to me that there was the interviews done. Person. You get a scored interview, the way it sounds, right? And so the top scorer got the nod, right?
there was no top scoring, just to be clear. I did not receive back all the ratings. They did take a vote. It was my
Okay, so
understanding,
they took a
So they
vote.
took a vote.
they took a vote. It was my understanding, which I clarified with, I believe it was Donna. And that we were, and from the previous meeting, that once they determined that we were supposed to come back together and meet with, they had put a expedited schedule together to meet with their top candidate to clarify so that we could move forward with the contract. You can't move forward with the contract unless you have some basic things together. So that yesterday's meeting was to clarify what those basic things were. And we did not have the information at that time to draft a contract for the board to take a look at today, because we're waiting, and
So you
that's
still
what
don't
the
have a
process.
contract?
There really hasn't been any
There
work done
hasn't
on the
been-
contract. Because
In order to have a contract, legally binding contract, you have to understand who you're contracting with. And that was the discussion yesterday as to what that legal. Is it a partnership? Is it an LLC? Is it an individual, et cetera? And then I think there was some clarification as to understanding. I believe the county attorney went through some of the questions in the 25-page document that you approved today. And that was yesterday's discussion, and we are waiting some further information. And no, you can't have a contract when you don't have the details to put in the contract, as far as the terms and conditions and the legal status of the parties.
So at yesterday's meeting, did you get any of those details that you were required?
We understand what the options may be, but we don't have it confirmed.
not on
It
who the
wasn't-
contract would be with.
It. Correct.
Right?
Right, whether it's an individual or if it's a partnership.
And we can't
or
give them
corporation.
legal advice as to which way would be most beneficial for them to hold their businesses.
Robert,
So the contract, when it's written, can be with an LLC, a partnership, or an individual sole proprietor. That's up to them, not up to us. They come back and say, we're gonna be an LLC, that's what gets plugged in, and that protects their personal property as far as that's concerned. Which would be a wise choice, but that's their business. Once they tell us that, the contract can be put together with that name on it and move forward.
Then some of the terms as to the payouts and all of that, that gets tweaked as well at that point.
Right, but using the initial proposal, those details could be started. And if the county wants to look at something different than maybe what their proposal was, that's the contract negotiation part of it. They want this, we say, this is how we had this one in the past and we like the way that worked with that, yeah.
so there were 6 people on the interview committee, correct? And you voted 4-2 for one individual. But do you want to bring this back to us to vote on 2 candidates instead of 1?
Yeah. Which one of the two? They
What was
were
the-
that close.
Why did we have the interview? What is their purpose? Might not even have them.
They whittled it down to the top 2.
Yep.
It's just like when I went for.
No, they voted for. What?
Two.
That's correct,
Okay, that should be the end.
not always.
You guys are rehashing this for no reason.
Okay. It's up to the board, Robert.
But the board has the final say.
Right,
So this individual is under the impression they have.
well, they have been chosen.
Chosen per
Well,
county.
we, as the board,
The board has to final,
the board has to approve.
so we did that, just so you know that. And we also, I believe it was Donna who clarified that we would provide before they incur any dollars moving forward with an accountant or an attorney or anything, that we would clarify the status of where all that's at. And that's when Brian then stepped in and said, if we need to take a couple extra weeks, the internal crews will take care of the things that we can, so that we make sure we get all of our ducks in a row, so to speak, with the contract, so it doesn't have to be like revisited, wondering if we missed putting something in or left something out.
So the rest of us on the board have to just accept and trust in what the committee put together. We don't know who any of the applicants are. I don't anyways. You guys did the interviews, you guys did the reviews, you guys did the vote. The recommended person comes before the board for final approval.
And out of the candidates, you got it narrowed down to someone that is qualified and can do the job without having to resubmit, even though we're underneath the deadline?
Yeah.
So they're confident that they have a qualified person at the top.
Well,
Are you able to say something, please?
at this moment, we're in discussion before the month.
I believe. Yeah, there's a difference of opinion. There was strong discussion surrounding both candidates. But there was a 4-2 vote.
Cause I did have a committee member contact me that was concerned whether or not the qualifications were met to fill the position. And I'm in the dark as far as.
That was on the Parks Committee. Not on the interview committee.
Right.
So,
And that came from this meeting yesterday.
Probably.
Right. Right.
so the question is are we in the rush to get it to a vote next week? Is that what everybody wants? Because we had a recommendation, that's what I'm hearing from some of you, that whatever the interview board said, that's we're gonna live with, even though there might be some reservations after other interviews, but is that what this board wants?
Well, this is a 1-year contract. This will be a 1-year contract.
Right. To start, this was going to be a 1-year
1 year
contract
to
with
see how
you know,
things
with
work.
a review to possibly do more years later.
Well, I mean, trusted that the Parks Committee put together an interview committee to search for a person. I think we have to trust that they did their due diligence in picking a candidate here. And we're into April here. Gotta have somebody in place here come opening season. So we have a contract ready or don't we?
We can't, the contract will be ready when we get the information back.
So this the individual.
I mean, there is the basic contracts that I use, that I look at, where there's certain things that have to be in a contract. But the recital for how the consideration, in other words, the terms of payment and obligations aren't in there, who we're contracting with. Those are getting the accord and making sure that the insurance is exactly what's required. That'll get slipped in there. So no, we don't have a contract ready, but that's not gonna take any time once we get the appropriate information.
So I'll make a motion that we move forward next meeting to vote on that first.
Do we need a motion to do that, or can it be just put
Just a consensus or put it on the date, because it's not on the agenda for vote or actions. Is that the desire of the board is to have information available for a vote next week? Is that the desire?
I guess I just want clarification because I've been on different boards where we've hired maintenance people, city clerks, city administrator. So every process was done equally between each candidate, the way that the board or your hiring committee.
What the hiring committee, what we did, we had factors to consider, tried to keep it open-ended for the committee members. And the individual candidates presented their proposals with some follow-up questions. I have not seen, I think I only have, and normally what I do is I then compile the results. I examine the comments they make as in support of their candidates, each, whatever their choice is. But I've only seen, to date, I believe, one of those. I don't have that data. In order to have a contract for you to vote next week, we still have to have all of those unanswered questions that came up yesterday. That still has to be in there. I would assume that shouldn't take too long, but I can't put a contract together without that relevant information that plugs into the agreement.
So-
Back
And then
where I
we-
was asking that. So each candidate did or did not have the same step,
They did.
including the point system that you said you only received from one. I'm a little confused.
Brian, did you
They,
score?
then they just took a vote.
Brian scored,
Yes.
you said you scored, so there's been scoring done.
I'm not saying that there hasn't been. If you're asking me what those scores were, how they added up, I can't attest to that.
The scoring sheets all haven't been turned in yet, but they will be.
I assume they're in order, but I can't tell you anything beyond that. I do know there was some that felt it wasn't appropriate to score.
Jesus.
Well, I can't, I'm just relaying what happened. It was,
But each individual that asked what.
Commissioners, Greg, can you move your speaker? We can't hear you at all.
we didn't have a list of questions. What we had was a list of criteria because we knew each application, excuse me, each proposal was going to be unique to the parties putting it together. And so we wanted to, the committee wanted to see their proposals. Brian and I had put together was, Brian provided some feedback and I put together these are the things you should be looking at. And if they don't discuss it in their proposal so that you can rate them on that, here are the questions you might want to ask, you know, to tease that information out from the proposal. Because we did not, the committee did not dictate how their proposals were to be put together other than to say your list of qualifications, your immediate and potentially long-term proposal as far as park management and so we're, yeah,
And we asked questions.
and they did their follow-up questions.
For
I
all
guess
four, for all four
I can
candidates.
Quickly read off what some of the criteria was: experience in managing programs and budgets, process of electronic reservation payment system, proposed monthly and annual reporting structure. These were things that we had to use as a guideline, outline. General process of handling routine problems, how, you know, so they gave an answer, how are you going to handle this? Plan for addressing routine maintenance. Did the candidate express a solid understanding of the importance of keeping the public face of the park? Knowledge of wildcat campsite and general camper, and then that was about it. So there was about 9 criteria, for lack of a better word, we had as outline, and then we had separate questions. We didn't have per se this question that I'm gonna ask, or this question that somebody else is gonna ask. We use that as an outline to determine the importance of different things.
And that same
Based on their-
formula was used for each candidate.
Each one had a guess, some of them came in with a very good plan. Some of them came in and said, well, what if we do this, or we'll look at it when I have, but those were the different things. So that's the difference. And as I said, we had 4, we narrowed it down to 2.
No, you
because
narrowed it down to
we
one.
looked at
Then you narrowed it down to one,
There were 4, we narrowed it down to 1.
right? You narrowed it down to one
I guess that's what you call it, yeah.
with a vote 4-2.
Yeah, it should be settled.
There was a lot of
Amazing.
questions. That's
I hear
my
that,
opinion.
So what are these, what are the questions? What are-
Well, it should have been asked before now.
We asked them yesterday, and we didn't get answered.
She wasn't
The
prepared. either.
questions were so that we could move forward with finalizing the contract. As to how I mean, you had. So it was those questions as to how we were gonna finalize the contract tonight.
Well, I would advise that you needed a little some more information. You would have gave it to her yesterday. And so you could get those questions answered, correct?
Well, we directed her to go
They,
come up with, some kind of a cooperation.
on who the contract was going to be with, because. But then I hear, we can't do a contract until we have this. But we told them not to incur an, expense in getting these set up for. Why? If they need to get it set up, then
If you want to set up an LLC, for example, you have to pay to set it up.
Right.
Right.
Just FYI.
Should be
Uh-huh.
under.
I mean, we won't want them to set it up and then turn
Not
around and say,
actually
oh,
get
we're-
it.
we changed our mind. We're not gonna.
well, we don't know what they're gonna set up. I assume they're gonna set that up. We don't know. That was. I think that's the reservation. That some people. Information wasn't clear as to, they hadn't determined how. And maybe they have, but it didn't come out in the meeting yesterday that there was a determination as to how they were gonna hold the business. So we're waiting on that.
Well, when they left here yesterday, they were gonna go get this information. They were trying to get with the lawyers and figure out if they want to do an LLC or a contract. That's what they were
Well-
left here to do yesterday. So they're gonna go spend money on stuff.
Well, and I think that is part of, the issue is we thought we'd be a little further down the road, having those decisions having already been made, maybe the actual getting your business, but that. I mean, at least in my mind, I'm not voting, but that in my mind is part of your business plan. Do you have your? So we're just waiting and trying to determine next steps.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, part of the process at this point is, someone's gonna spend money to set up a LLC, LLP, whatever, without knowing if the county board's gonna continue on with getting that you can't get the contract set up with the name of an LLP in it if the LLP doesn't exist.
Well,
But it costs money to get that to exist, so does the county
Right.
board want to make a decision on who you want to work with or to hire? And then get the contract taking place and come back the following week
sounds
with
to
the
me-
contract, get the contract approved.
well, we have,
So,
I keep reminding everyone, especially yesterday. It is not our job to assume they're gonna have an LLC or an LLP or hold it individually.
we know
Be
that.
any and all of the above. It is the candidate's obligation to tell us which way they were going to hold it. Hold the business. And that is, they're in the process of determining that now.
And they didn't know about that either until today, until yesterday. I mean, they didn't know they had to get what's in the contract. They didn't know nothing about the contract. There is no contract.
Because I haven't, were
Well,
they given a copy of the old contract?
Yes,
Where's
and
that?
Robert had a
I
question.
think you have
you have that old contract. In the paragraph of any of the contracts that the board has, and anybody proposing to run a business, you say it's between this party and this party. The county, which is a governmental entity, that's recited in there. The individuals, you recite whether they're holding it in their individual capacity, or they're holding it as an LLC or a corporation incorporated in Wisconsin or whatever. That is all part of the preamble of your agreement. And I guess that's part of where the group got stuck yesterday in collecting information. And I'm sure that will be forthcoming, but it wasn't anticipated, or I guess, I can't
So what was the candidate told that why they would come in?
get the details of the contract, how the contract would be detailed out. So if there's
So
clarification.
not saying, oh, we might reconsider having you. You were our top candidate, so we need to get these details. Is
I'm
that
not
what
here
she
to
was
argue-
told?
I'm not here to argue with anyone.
Well, I know, but I'm just trying to,
Trying to
I'm
get
just
an
trying to
idea.
wrap my head around the whole thing from yesterday.
There was a lot of questions that came up after the interview, and a lot of details that were not answered, and we wanted to get those answers, and that's what yesterday is about.
That was a second interview. That wasn't
Well,
coming in to get the details of the contract worked out. I just, it's.
Somebody
a
asked
little-
at yesterday's, I was asked at yesterday's meeting, do you have any questions? The only question I asked was, how is the contract? Who are we contracting with? How is it going to be held? Typical question I asked. And
But we had the county attorney here.
To
Sure.
answer.
no, the county attorney was here to go over this contract you went through today, I believe, on the 25-page Corps of Engineer, and to clarify any questions that they had or he had of them regarding that. The only question I had is, what is the legal status? How will this be held? So I can put the contract together. There was a lot of discussion on that. There was discussion on requirements under that 25 page core contract, or however long it is, as to what as to hiring employees. And that was, from my perspective, the brunt of the conversation yesterday was surrounding those two issues.
And they basically said they weren't going to be hiring any employees for the first year.
They're gonna go get.
Well, it depended upon how they were going to hold the business to whether or not.
We're getting into detail.
It's detailed.
Robert has got head up quite a lot. Go ahead.
Cart's in front of the horse.
Mhm.
We shouldn't be having this conversation. This should have been made ready before it came to the board.
Yep.
The committee should have said, okay, we need this information, get the information. One, the person was told they were hired before the board did the approval. Two, if you need the information, it shouldn't be discussed by us about how we need the information or what information we need. Get the information, have it ready, then bring it to the board. I know there's a time crunch. This is kind of an effort in futility right now, as far as this is concerned, because we aren't gonna do anything about it until this is all put together.
And I don't think it is on the board agenda.
It's not.
Dewey just said he wanted discussion about
Sure,
the meeting.
But
Want you to be aware of where we're at.
all of this stuff has to be ironed out before it comes to us.
Yeah, they gotta come back and get this contract, fill in the dots, and
Mhm.
then we make our decision.
My only concern is that somebody's been told that they were hired, but we didn't make the approval.
They were told that they were the top candidate,
top
which
candidate.
in,
Yeah, I don't think
you know,
anybody's.
there would be an assumption that they were the top candidate, so that would be the
I was
recommendation to the
told that
board.
They were told they were hired, they were the top pick, and board has the final say at a board meeting on an action.
Right, and the
The auditor,
board, based on the recommendation of the interview committee, would act on that.
and I think the auditor sent out an email that talked about preliminary discussions so that we could get to a finalized potential
We
contract.
have a lot of discussion. I think we need to bring-
Preliminary discussions for today's meeting, you mean?
That the meeting yesterday, that they, Donna, you have your email. I don't have it in front
Yeah,
of me.
okay, I just want to clarify a couple things. First of all of the applicants did get a copy of the contract that was signed by Jake in 2022. So that was accessible to all the applicants who proposed, who did a proposal to the committee. Secondly, I was out of the office on Friday and Tess had asked if I would please, excuse me. Tess had asked if I would please send an email out to the top applicant.
In response to your email to me as to whether
Yes,
anybody
yes,
was
Yes,
contacted.
because I guess Tess, you had said you talked to the applicant and you had told that person to come in yesterday for the meeting. So then you said, can you please confirm that she is coming in? So that's all I said in the email. I said, I am emailing you to confirm confirm the meeting on Monday at 9:30 a.m. in the room 219. That's all I said to her because that's all I knew. You know, I wasn't on the actual interviewing committee, just so the whole board knows that. I chose not to be.
And after Donna's email, that I did call up the candidate to confirm she could come in. But I hadn't contacted her hadn't contacted anybody prior to that because I wasn't sure where they were at. So Donna's email spurred that on. And then we talked on the phone. Said everybody should be contacted then. I gave her a call. I contacted the commissioner to make sure I was on the right process for what their committee had done. And then Donna, go ahead, Donna.
I also copied Dewey on that because you had asked me to copy Dewey on that email. So I did. And yep, and then
Board chair.
Yep, and I was also asked to contact the other applicants to tell them the preliminary discussion was being held and thank you for your proposal. That's what I did. That was on Friday.
Okay, we're having a lot of discussion here,
Yeah.
as Robert commented, that if we get the information, you think we can get the information by next week's meeting so we can make a vote yea or nay?
We will see.
We will have to see. You need to know by Thursday noon, so it can get on the agenda.
Correct.
So, okay. So is that the feeling of the board that you want to go and have a vote one way or the other next Tuesday? Okay. Final comment or question I have, do we want to have our extra 3 see the top applicant's proposal or just go with a recommendation? You guys tell me what you want. You're the ones that are here every day. I'm not. You take the calls.
That was the recommendation that we were going to make. I don't
All right, but then we'll go
know
with
that there was
that.
a change.
Right, so that'll be when we get the motion, it'll probably be a motion to offer contract to XYZ as presented, if it's available by Thursday noon. Does that make a fair assessment? Yes. All this discussion to get to that point. Okay, so the directive is to find us a contract. We can take a look at it and make a decision on it. And that's not ready by next Thursday noon, postpone of the week.
You give me a copy of Jake's old contract, please?
You had that.
Donna sent it to you last Wednesday after
You got that.
it's part of her email.
In the packet.
Do you want me to print a copy?
You know what?
Yeah, we didn't.
I think I have a copy.
Last week, because mine was down most of the week again.
Okay, anything else, Brian? I guess I stuck you on the seat for a while.
That's it for me.
All right. Going on to ARPA funding distribution, discuss and possibly approve some ARPA fund distribution from the capital improvement fund. We had some discussion before. Just approval time for.
Yeah, this is, actually, I took, I took the sheet that I had presented, made some of the adjustments that we had talked about, the ADA restrooms. Pulling that down to what we thought the quote actually came in at, the West Lot improvements stayed at the 230. We still have the La Crescent sidewalk. You did approve the $100,000 to the Houston County Fair. and
Did we approve or is that?
We approved that last week.
You
for
approved
the
that one.
Houston County Ag Society.
Ag Society, yeah, Houston County Ag Society, the childcare up to $8,000. How? Will they just send us
We're gonna get an invoice.
an invoice?
Mhm.
Okay, okay. I was like,
It's
well,
not
should
ready
I?
yet. They'll sign up for a couple more days.
Okay. So we'll change that one. We kind of reduced the Houston, the technology for public health and human services. You know, a maybe or a maybe not with the 11,000, so that's kind of down at the bottom. I was thinking that we had approved the food shelf, $1,000 each, but. I guess we didn't. We just talked about possibly in the future.
No, back
This
here
one.
on the.
Oh,
back
you
side.
mean the second?
Yeah,
Second.
a second,
We did it once already.
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right, you did it.
I just.
And then there
Talked
was-
about it the other day.
And then there was discussion about doing another one, and I was thinking it had been approved,
No,
but
it
it
wasn't.
wasn't, so that's why those are on there. So I didn't know if that was something that the board did want to approve or not. I moved all of the items that we had talked about going to the capital improvement reserve to there, so that you can see, if we take the roof, which I left at the $200,000, just because we don't know for sure. The boiler replacement, the AP system. The addition for the west lot improvements that's over the 230 that was paid for by ARPA to include a vestibule amount. I'm not sure what that was. I put 67,000 for the thing and.
So the 117,000 is what?
That is for the difference between the 230
And the,
and the 297 that the west lot came in at,
Plus the.
plus a vestibule.
oh,
Well, that's where you got.
Plus-
stuff for.
Yeah, plus a vestibule.
and that's just.
Yeah, it's just a ballpark. I went back to, I think at one point it was broken down into like the sewer part of it and this part of it and then the vestibule, and that's the number that I used. So, just to give an impression as to what's remaining in that capital improvement reserve after those. I had, I think discussed a couple times the trailer that needs to be replaced for the recycling center, which wasn't necessarily budgeted for. So I would recommend paying for that out of these funds because it can't be DOT approved anymore.
That the item truck stop.
Yeah, that's the ancient truck stop. So I gave you each a copy of that quote that they did. Martin, you can probably attest to the fact that
Boxes, Marty? 14?
It's for the trailers for your,
For hauling the bins, for
Yeah.
hauling the recycle bins, it's basically, and we definitely always need one and sometimes we need two. What happened is one just got so rusty, it was just total Swiss cheese and he just said,
not
I
worth
don't think I can fix this anymore. And then the other one's pretty rough, but he did certify it. So that's kind of where we're at. And what's nice about this quote is that we took the old trailer, which it's not exactly like taking a standard trailer. It's more like a frame that's fitted for these. We
it's
took it
special.
to the shop and said, this is what we're talking about. And so then he based his quote on that. So, which is quite nice. So it wasn't like buying a trailer and retrofitting it, and having all these extra things done to it.
The custom built trailer for the
Right.
purposes thereof,
Exactly.
right?
So that's the,
So these, we need a couple of motions. One is to possibly or to pay for or authorize ARPA for this. And to look at the food shelf funds. That's.
no,
No, just
this is
one.
gonna, it would just be an approval for the trailer out of the capital improvement reserve. And then the food shelf if you wanted to do that one.
So for this thing for Meissen, is that gonna come out of the upper money or?
No, that'll be out of the capital improvement
You need a
reserve.
motion on that?
That's the last item.
Well, yes, you need a motion to purchase it because it's over the $10,000 item.
I make a motion that we go ahead with that
Okay,
and then take it out of capital improvements.
motion made and seconded for the trailer purchase. Any further discussion? Being none, all in favor, say aye.
All right,
Opposed, say nay. Carry. And then now we need another one for the ARPA funding for the food bill.
If you were going to
if we
do that.
wanted to do that.
If you wanted to
I
do that,
Just
that-
brought it up as
I'm fine with
as a thought.
Mhm. There was a newspaper article again about how they're really getting hit with that SNAP reduction. The food shelves are.
We raise it 10,000, 11,000?
5,000.
1,000 for each for a total of five.
Mhm.
Five places.
1,000 each for each food show.
I'll make a motion, we give each food stuff. Second. Discussion? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, say nay. Carry. Okay. Yeah, offers or any other?
That was it. We haven't really talked about any,
That'd be moved over to the page lines.
yes. Mhm.
And you. and
Still
you-
waiting on the Fowler and Hammer bill.
Is it done?
Yeah.
And is it working?
Yeah.
You got warm water?
Well,
No.
not really.
Well,
But you know, you know, 2 out of 3. What do we do? Uh-huh.
All right. Very good. Let's see. Harper's done, let's see. I guess we'll go to discussion. Discussion item. The only thing I have is last Wednesday, the public hearing reference to the no wake zone along West Channel. There were about half of what we had on previous meetings. 14, 15 people, and there were no opposition. The 100-foot thing was really approved or liked. So for lack of a better word, being forwarded to DNR for their perusal and final approval, and we'll be able to hopefully bring it back soon. But we've done everything we can on a local level for that. The ended the Parks meeting yesterday. Boccia Park, there's a lad who was proposing a improvement out there, but he does not have it to Jeff Walker, who is kind of the go-between on that, so waiting on getting that in. Other than that, the main part of the discussion yesterday was management part and getting things ready for the season. Those are pretty much what I've, and then WinLAC is next Monday, I guess. We'll talk about it and I'll talk about that. So moving on to other commissioners' report, we'll start with Eric, right down the line.
Last Tuesday afternoon, we had our comprehensive land use
Oh, I forgot about that.
meeting with TDK, EKDA. And we worked on the final draft, final chapter of the draft. And it's being sent out to several people to have them review it, to go over it, to make sure it looks right. And it's going to be brought up at our workshop meeting for us to look at and have discussion on it. So look for that. Last Thursday night, Greg and I had an extension meeting. Had several discussions on certain things, nothing real earth shattering, but there's a farm safety day camp coming up here next May 18th, I believe. Thursday. Well, maybe it is, I can't remember. But I better remember I gotta be there, but
I gotta cook, so I got.
yeah, you gotta make the verses and I gotta do my part, so. That's gonna be at the fairgrounds. I just wanna, at last week's meeting on discussion item, Bob, you brought up about the situation with subleasing on the airport grounds on a hangar, and I apologize because I misunderstood that situation. I assumed that the new insurance policy was already in place, but it is not. So I apologize for that because I was confused on that. So I agree with what you were trying to say, that that hasn't been done yet, so he should just go with with the way it is right now, so. Other than that, I can't think of anything else right now.
Are they planning on having any hearings on this land use plan? Some of the townships have been asking if they're gonna have any.
Yep,
or when they-
Eventually,
Yep,
Have we got any scheduled yet or not?
nothing scheduled, finalized yet. It's looking more like towards the end of May, wasn't that what we discussed?
Yep, so after the commissioners look at it at the work group session this month and do one last final read of it. Then it will be online where people can review it and comment. And then, yes, of course, we do have to have a public hearing before it's officially adopted. So there'll still be lots of opportunities for people to see it and give feedback.
I think distribution of the document, the draft is going to some of the townships, some of the libraries. I think when we go through the list of possible places that they'd be available to people.
Yeah, initially TKDA, I think, had suggested townships could have it available, but a lot of our our townships don't have set locations where they're open Monday through Friday. So it'll be sent to them, but it won't be like. That won't be a spot where people can inspect it.
Libraries. So they're trying to make it available, but they're gonna have to do some finding it. And of course, once it's online, it should be more available.
Yeah, and that's a good question. And at the work group session this month, TKDA will explain the process going forward,
Yep.
so everybody knows.
So everybody gets the same information.
Anything else?
Nope.
Robert,
I had a Selco meeting last week with regard to changing Selco's status from nonprofit to being a funded for-profit organization. So that's going to be a lot of conversation on whether they should do that or not, and merge with Selco to become one organization. Selco is the only one in the state of Minnesota that is not. They're the only one in the state of Minnesota that is still a nonprofit organization, a 501c3. So you have to file a tax return either way, but you don't get that nonprofit donation status if you get out of it. So there's a lot of quandary about that. Otherwise, sells all right. Last night I had the Hiawatha Valley Mental Health meeting. I'm gonna go see John after this. There's some questions about Fillmore County versus Houston County. And talk to him about that. Otherwise, the biggest conversation, I guess, about that was that they've had a lot of surprise costs that showed up that weren't budgeted for. And in the past, the finance committee has never budgeted for any unforeseen. I mean, maintenance, repairs and little things like that. It amounts to about $20,000, what they had to pay out that wasn't in the budget that we discussed as far as actually coming up with a budget that takes some of that into consideration for future reference. Hiawatha Valley. Otherwise, I've got upcoming meetings, but nothing to report on after other than that. So that'll take care of it for me.
I did a couple township annual meetings I attended. Like Greg pointed out there, they had some question on where we're at with the comprehensive plan process. Hearing some of the board members have gotten questions on their own. Nice to get an update for that.
Nice or interesting too.
Yeah, it is. So I guess with Crescent Township, they're kind of concerned with the farm that's been sold out in the valley. There's some emails going back and forth tomorrow and meet with Martin on another property after this meeting. Greg and I put an inquiry on him for that too, to maybe keep us at speed, because I think we get some calls on this.
Okay.
If you need me to do that Monday meeting, let me know.
okay. Is that
My turn.
Greg?
Everybody's pretty much hashed over all the meetings that I was at.
Yes, I was with Eric. Yesterday's meeting with Wildcat. I got my questions answered, I guess. That's about all I got. Okay. Anything else, Alan? Any comment that we missed on what you've seen?
No.
Okay, moving on to public comment, closing public comment. Board and
So. My name's Mark Bennett, and I just wanted to bring a concern that I had regarding this whole Wildcat thing. First of all, I was one of the applicants. And there was 5 people that interviewed. And Carol Lapham was one of the 5 people. And her daughter is extremely close friends with the applicant that she voted for. And I believe it's a true conflict of interest.
I don't have any contact with her.
I just wanted a fair shot at this thing, and I don't feel like I got it. And
Well, I guess I point out that you were actually in my mind before I went through and did all of the scoring. You were actually until I added up the scores.
okay, well, anything else, Mark? I mean, this is something that's beyond our,
well, I think it needs to be public.
okay.
That's why I just wanted everyone to know.
Thank you. Anything else for the good of the cause? Anything else for the good of the cause?
Anything you want?
Entertain a motion.
It's come to BS or?
Just like you're working. Oh, I just checking on it.
You know, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
We're second.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Okay, there we go.